Welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. As Europe navigates internal divisions over support for Ukraine and the future of relations with Russia, two key right-wing leaders, Hungary's Viktor Orbán and Italy's Giorgia Meloni, have made in a move trying scrutiny across the continent. Joining us today on TVP World to explore what's at stake is Marcin Zaborowski, Europe editor at TVP World, a seasoned analyst of EU politics, as well as transatlantic ties and Central European diplomacy. Hello and welcome to World Talks.
Thank you for the very kind introduction. I appreciate it.
That's an understatement. Now, can you help us set the stage first? How would you personally characterize Viktor Orbán's stance towards the war in Ukraine, and how is Giorgia Meloni positioning Italy with respect to the Ukraine and Russian war?
Well, these are very different positions. And by the way, Viktor Orbán is in Rome today. But so means that he is not only meeting with Giorgia Meloni, but he also met with the Pope. And it was the meeting with the Pope during which Prime Minister Orbán tried to spin it that he had some kind of consensus here, some kind of unity of minds on his anti-war agenda. But we have absolutely no confirmation from Vatican about that at all. Only Viktor Orbán himself tweeted saying, I met with the Pope and we discuss our anti-war and peace agenda, implying that somehow Vatican was with him on the same wavelength. And we know that the current Pope is not on the same wavelength, and his silence on the matter suggests that indeed Viktor Orbán is just doing his own spin. That may be appealing to the Hungarian public opinion, but it's not appealing to anybody else. When it comes to the meeting with Giorgia Meloni, here we have two right-wing leaders which agree on a lot of issues, such as anti-war agenda, for example. They signed a declaration on this matter. They both are very critical of the LGBT rights. They both are very critical of migration policies, and they are anti-migration, essentially, anti-globalization, and so on. But when it comes to the issue of Ukraine, Giorgia Meloni is a staunch supporter of Ukraine and a staunch critic of Russia. And Viktor Orbán is exactly the opposite. Viktor Orbán is extremely anti-Ukrainian and very, very pro-Russian, to the point that here the public opinion and experts in Budapest, where I am at this moment, are of the opinion that Russia will interfere directly in this election on behalf of Viktor Orbán.
All right, you mentioned the spin that Orbán is trying to do with the Pope. It reminds me of when Hungary is in charge of the rotating EU presidency. Orbán also went on kind of a diplomatic mission of his own making while tagging the EU presidency logo on the bottom of most of the pictures that they are publishing. It doesn't seem like this is anything new that he's trying to do. But when it comes to effectiveness, do you think that this message is being sent to, be it domestic or to people in the United States or EU audience? We do know that as far as EU is concerned, they're not really buying this spin. But outside of the European Union, do you think it has any legs?
Well, the target of this messaging is clearly domestic, and it's in preparation for the incoming election. The election will take place in April next year, so we still have quite few months to go. But the current opinion polls are very unfavorable for Viktor Orbán. And it looks like that after the 15 years at the head of the Hungarian government, with almost complete state capture, he may actually lose power as long as these elections are fair and free. We actually know that these elections are not going to be fair, but there is also a big question mark whether this election will actually be free at all. And experts here in Budapest are of the view that there will certainly be the cases of manipulation as well as falsification of the election results. But for now, we can't be sure of it. But as far as Viktor Orbán is concerned, what is important, but always ahead of the election, he comes up with some kind of a extreme populist message. So, for example, in 2015, he was the first of European right-wing leaders who came up with a strong anti-immigration and anti-immigration agenda, and it paid off. The Hungarian public opinion liked his message and voted in huge numbers for him, to the point that he actually received a constitutional majority. This time around, he wants to repeat this trick by appealing to anti-Ukrainian sentiments, which not only exist within the Hungarian society, but he also is manufacturing these sentiments through state media, through his control of the educational program in the country, and so on. So it's Ukraine and being anti-Ukrainian and being pro-Russian, which is meant to deliver Viktor Orbán another election victory. Whether that will work, time will only tell, but certainly anti-Ukrainian sentiments do exist within the Hungarian population.
Right, and speaking of the meeting with the Pope, afterwards, Viktor Orbán actually criticized Trump's tariff and sanction on Russia, saying that, well, it is a mistake. Do you think that this will resonate well with Donald Trump being one of Viktor Orbán's staunchest allies, who's already perhaps had a little bit of fallout with the Hungarian Prime Minister?
Well, I think that Viktor Orbán is already treading on a thin ice when it comes to his special relationship with Donald Trump. But the two men certainly have a similar take on criticism of the liberal agenda, being anti-globalization, anti-immigration, anti-woke, and so on. But when it comes to the issue of global politics, there are lots of disagreements. Viktor Orbán is both pro-Russian and pro-Chinese. And Donald Trump has been anti-Chinese for a long time. That's actually one of his key election messages. And we can't say that he's becoming anti-Russian, nothing like that. Still a long way to go. But Donald Trump certainly made it clear that he wants to see European sanctions on Russian energy, and he is expecting Europeans to basically switch from Russian to American energy. So there is a business to be made here, and Viktor Orbán is standing in the way of that, saying that, well, actually these sanctions are not such a good idea. So, and we also know that Viktor Orbán has been convincing Donald Trump that Hungary cannot switch off from its dependency on Russian energy into alternative sources of energy, including the American, because it'll be too expensive. But the experts are saying that's not true. The switching into alternative sources of energy is entirely doable, and Donald Trump will sooner or later understand that this is the case.
All right, now I'm looking at these two politicians, Meloni and Viktor Orbán. Like I mentioned at the top of the interview, even though these two agree on some of the more social stuff and being both kind of portrayed as a conservative figure, they do differ a lot on the Ukraine issue as well as their condemnation of Russia. What do you think both parties stand to gain or risk having this engagement that just took place?
Well, I think that they will be obviously stressing out the elements where on which they agree on, and that would be bashing some of the Brussels politics, migration pact, climate policies, and so-called woke policies, meaning basically the policies of promoting sexual awareness and sexual responsibility in school curriculums. Both Viktor Orbán and Giorgia Meloni made a big point of signing up to the anti-woke agenda, and to say that they are the two staunchest critics of woke policies within the European Union. But frankly, it is a point, it is a point that they may agree on, but you don't really win the election on something like that. Plus, it's not really something where Viktor Orbán still have some space to grow on the more domestic support because of his anti-woke, anti-LGBT agenda. Because people know that that's Orbán, Viktor Orbán. That's he already played this card before. Nothing new is happening here. So he's now jumping on this anti-Ukrainian card. And actually, like I said, he's actually manufacturing even anti-Ukrainian sentiments. And he, on this particular point, Giorgia Meloni is in a very different space, in a very different on a very different mind on this than Viktor Orbán.
Right, like I mentioned, there's perhaps already a saturation when it comes to voter turnout on the topic of the anti-woke agenda, and perhaps that's the reason also why they're switching tracks. It's actually very interesting to see the dynamics of how internal politics could affect how these politicians stand on a global scale as well. So thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it, and thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you. All the best.
Cheers. And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. For more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.